All right, let's get the show going. Make sure we are live, and I believe that we are. Man, YouTube fired up quick. Sometimes I hit the go live button, and it takes a couple minutes, or not a couple minutes, but 15, 20 seconds for them to really get going. But this one fired up right away. I think YouTube is ready to go. YouTube is fired up and excited, just like we all are, because it's Wednesday night. It's 8:30. We're all excited for the Panther-Lair Show, but we're also all excited because that means it's Wednesday night. We're one day closer to Pitt Clemson on Saturday afternoon at Heinz Field. It's coming and it can't get here soon enough. I think most people who tune into this podcast would probably agree that this one just can't get here quickly enough. And I feel like I have a million things to say about this game and about Pitt and about what I think about Pitt Clemson, about what's on the line and who's got the advantage and this. So I'm trying to adjust the audio levels a little bit, get it so it's not blaring. But I feel like I have a million things to say about this game, about matchups, about advantages, about offense, about defense, about what's on the line for Pitt and what's on the line for Clemson. I got this crazy idea that Clemson has more to lose than Pitt does, which is kind of a wild concept to have. But it also makes Clemson arguably the more desperate team in this case, which is kind of a scary thing. It's very strange. It's not what any of us expected coming into this game, or at least into this season, that Clemson would be the more desperate team. But I think you can make a real case that Clemson is the more desperate team, more desperate to get a win, more in need of a win, or has more to lose with a loss, which is a wild proposition. We can talk about that in a little bit. But I'm like you, pretty much. What does the team say? The players say they have a 24-hour rule after a game where they dwell on the good and the bad for 24 hours, and then they move on to the next team. They move on to the next game. They move on to the next opponent. I don't know if those of us on the outside even took 24 hours. I mean, it was Saturday night after the Virginia Tech game on the Panther-Lair post game. We were already talking about Clemson, and by Sunday morning, I was still thinking some about the Virginia Tech game. But Clemson was on the mind. And it's been pretty much nonstop since then. I mean, that's the reality. Like, what else have you been thinking about this week? Steelers are off. So, I mean, if you go that way, it's kind of a little bit of a break in that regard. Pirates, they've been done for a long time. I don't even know if they even exist right now. Penguins, I guess, are getting going. College basketball is still a little ways away. Maybe you're into the NBA. I guess the NBA started, right? So you have that going. But, I mean, if you're a Pitt fan, I can't imagine you've been thinking about anything other than this game pretty much since Saturday night, certainly since Sunday morning. If you're like me, you go to church on Sunday morning, you pretty much just find different things to think about for that hour, not to be sacrilegious or anything like that. And I didn't go to church on Sunday morning. We had other things we had to do. But I imagine that there were a lot of Pitt fans who sat in church on Sunday morning, thought about Clemson, and thought about Kenny Pickett against Clemson's defense, thought about Pitt's defense against Clemson's offense, thought about what the stadium might be like, what the crowd might be like, what could actually happen, and what the scene might actually be like if Pitt goes in and, crazily enough, does what actually is expected to happen. Pitt's a 3.5, 4-point favorite. A lot of the computer metrics and the analytics and the S&P Plus and the FPI and all these things, they all favor Pitt. There are a lot of stats you can find that favor Pitt. Stats that don't necessarily depend on, what Pitt did against New Hampshire. Stats that sort of take a competition and opponent independent stats, and they favor Pitt. Clemson's coming into this game as the underdog. Clemson's coming into this game as the unranked team. I know they're both ranked in the coaches poll, but in the AP poll, Clemson is not ranked. Clemson is the team that is the underdog. Clemson is the team that is not ranked. Clemson is the team that arguably has more to lose. Like I said, we could talk about that. And I think we might go back and forth about it, and some people might agree and some might not. If outcomes live up to expectations, Pitt's going to win. If outcomes live up to expectations, and outcomes don't always live up to expectations, There's so many different things that can happen in a game. But we're sitting here on Wednesday night, 3 days away from from Saturday, 2.5 days away from, I guess, 2 days and would it be about 19 hours away from kickoff? And the reality is that there's a fairly strong expectation and perception that Pitt should win this game. And some of that has a lot to do with Clemson and where Clemson is right now. But a lot of it has to do with Pitt and where Pitt is right now. And they're coming off a game where they only scored 28 points. A game where they scored fewer than 40 for the first time this season. A game where they scored fewer than 30 for the first time since last year's Clemson game. And yet it wasn't a game where necessarily their offense was held in check. They only had about 411 yards of total offense, but they had a well-balanced attack with 208 rushing yards, 203 passing yards, or maybe it was flipped. It was 208 and 203. But it was a very balanced offensive attack. They scored the touchdowns that they needed to score, and then when they wanted to put the game away, as they had done the previous week at Georgia Tech, they iced it with an 11.5-minute drive. This is my favorite stat right now, and I put this on Twitter. I probably talked about it after the game. You look at the fourth quarters of the last two games, all right, and it's the beginning of the show. We kind of bounce around to different things. But I want to put this stat out there right now because I'm a big fan of this. And I think Pitt would love it if they could make it 3 fourth quarters in a row. But you look at the fourth quarters of the last two games, at Georgia Tech, at Virginia Tech. Total of 30 minutes of football, right? 15 minutes of Georgia Tech, 15 minutes of Virginia Tech. 30 minutes of football. Pitt had possession for 23 minutes and 16 seconds. Their opponents held the ball for less than 7 minutes. One of those a game was Pitt was leading by 30. The other game, Pitt was leading by 21. There was no question about what was going to happen. There was no question about what Pitt was going to attempt to do. The defenses there was no uncertainty. There were only like 3 passes thrown out of 38 plays. And they couldn't stop Pitt. Pitt controlled the game the way they wanted to control the game. When Pitt wanted to take control of it, slow things down, run the clock, and grind that thing out, they did it. And they did it very effectively. 211 yards on 38 plays. It's something like 5.6 yards per play. And they were almost all running the ball. They converted third downs. They converted fourth downs. And they took the air out of the ball. And they ran the clock down. 23 minutes and 16 seconds out of 30 minutes. They averaged 11 and a half, a little more than like 11:40 of possession in each of the last 2 fourth quarters. That's dominant. And this is for an offense that has built itself on explosive plays and downfield passing. And that's another angle we can get into as well, because Virginia Tech really worked to take away the downfield passing and the explosive plays. And Pitt said, all right, you want to take away that? That's fine. We can drive 94 yards. And so without the benefit of explosive plays and 50-yard passes and 40-yard passes and all those kinds of things, Pitt got the ball at its own 6 and marched 94 yards for its first touchdown. This offense can do a lot of different things in a lot of different ways right now, and it's only getting stronger. It's only getting better. The running game is coming along. Those 2 fourth quarters I just talked about, Izzy Abanikanda, 18 carries for 100 yards in those 2 fourth quarters of the last 2 games. This Virginia Tech game, they had the 11.5-minute drive. He carried the ball 11 times for 72 yards. Their offense has been very good, and I don't think it's out of line to say it's getting better. They may have scored less, close to half of their season average in the Virginia Tech game. Came in averaging 52, they scored 28. And yet I don't think you would look at that game and say the offense struggled. They had more challenges than they had in previous weeks. But they were still able to score the points they needed to score with 3 touchdowns in the first half. And then they were able to just absolutely kill it in the second half with an 11.5-minute drive. Or in the fourth quarter, with an 11.5-minute drive. And so I look at all of that and I say, okay, Pitt's about to face the toughest defense they have seen in who knows how long. Kenny Pickett told me this week on the Kenny Pickett Show that the toughest defense he has faced in his time at Pitt was the 2018 Clemson defense. The one they played in the ACC championship game when Kenny Pickett rather infamously threw for 8 yards. I don't know if this year's defense compares to that one. That one had like first-round draft picks all over the place. Their defensive line was super stout. Their corners, their corners were built like linebackers and ran like receivers and all that. I mean, like, that was a stud defense. This defense is very good. It's not quite as good as that one. And this Pitt offense is better than that one was. This Pitt offense can attack in a lot of ways. And that's sort of the premier matchup, is this Pitt offense versus that Clemson defense. This Pitt offense that is one of the best in the country at scoring from the red zone against Clemson's defense, which is one of the best in the country at stopping teams in the red zone. This is going to be, I don't want to say it's going to be a battle of attrition, but this does feel like the kind of game where Pitt's going to have to grind away, and grind away, and grind away, and they're going to get stopped. Clemson is going to stop them a bunch of times. Christodoulou is going to punt a bunch of times. He needs to be good today or on Saturday. He needs to be better than he was against Virginia Tech. But I actually believe that this offense can keep chipping away and eventually break through. And I think this offense believes that they can keep chipping away and eventually break through. And I think you saw a little bit of that against Virginia Tech, where they did get some stops. After that 94-yard drive, that long touchdown drive, Virginia Tech made some stops. They forced them to punt. Christodoulou did not have a great game, at least in the early going. But the offense didn't panic. They didn't get frustrated. They didn't start thinking, oh no, we suck again. They just kept going out there. And they drove down and scored 2 touchdowns at the end of the first half. And then again, like I said, they got another touchdown in the second half and killed the clock in the fourth quarter. This is a confident offense with a hell of a leader, taking him out on the field every time, setting the right tone for the offense and for the team, that it's almost of a feeling of, we got this. And that doesn't mean you don't play with a sense of urgency. You don't just keep waiting around, waiting for things to break through. You keep going at it and have a certain urgency and intensity. But Kenny Pickett is setting the tone for this team right now. And what I think everyone sees nationally, and what we all see, is the stats, the 21 touchdowns and the 1 interception. And I mean, he is physically playing at a really, really high level right now, but I think he is leading this team at possibly an even higher level because of the tone he sets. He talked after the Western Michigan game that he called a players-only meeting. He stepped up and took control of the team, and you saw how they responded. They beat the crap out of New Hampshire, more than this team usually beats the crap out of FCS opponents. And, it was the same thing after the Virginia Tech game, that he got up and stood up and talked to his teammates and said, this is why I came back. I came back for these games. I came back because I wanted to win at Lane Stadium. I came back because I want to beat Clemson. I never beat Clemson. I want to beat Clemson. I want to win these big games. I want to take us to that next level. This is why I came back. And I think guys believe in Kenny Pickett. And I think they're following him. I think he's leading this team better than he ever has. And so I think they're, kind of bringing it full circle to what we started off saying. The expectations are, the perception is that Pitt will beat Clemson. And I think there's a lot of reasons to convince yourself that it can happen. Now, we got a lot to talk about. I mean, I touched on some offense, Pitt offense, Clemson defense stuff. I think there's some really interesting things to talk about with Clemson's offense versus Pitt's defense, because quite frankly, if it's a battle of strengths with Pitt's offense and Clemson's defense, it's a battle of I don't want to say weaknesses, but we know Clemson's offense is the weakness of that team. And we know Pitt's defense is what has been susceptible. It was the Western Michigan game. You score 41 points, you should win. They've never lost under Pat Narduzzi when they scored 40 or more. That was the first time because the defense couldn't stop Western Michigan. And so there's a little bit of a concern there. You don't want to be the game that gets Clemson going. Clemson eventually, you would think, if not this season, the next season will have a breakout. Their offense will break out. They have too many playmakers, too much talent on that offense, from quarterback out to the receivers. There's too much for them to stay bottled up like they've been all season. At some point, they're going to break out. You don't want to be the defense that lets that happen. Now, I have some thoughts on why I don't think they will be that defense, but there's some things to talk about there for sure. Of course, this is the Panther-Lair Show. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You know that website if you're a Pitt fan. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet: football, basketball, recruiting. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, and of course, message boards where you can interact with lots of other Pitt fans. And let me tell you, there's some awesome stuff happening on the Panther-Lair.com message boards right now. And that's not just like the conversation and the interactions and, all of those kinds. There's great conversation and interaction leading into this game. But right now, there's something really special happening on the message boards. I'm going to tout it a little bit, and I had nothing to do with this. This is not me at all. But Pitt fans are helping other Pitt fans get to this game right now. This isn't even a promo. This is a shout out to those guys, because this happened sort of organically starting, I think, yesterday and going through the night and through all day today on Wednesday, of Pitt fans saying, hey, I can't get a ticket. I can't afford a ticket right now. Can anybody help me out? And other Pitt fans stepping up and saying, I got you. And Pitt fans going another step to saying, I got 3 tickets. Who needs them? I'm going to go right now to the website and buy 2 tickets. Who needs them? And I think there's something like 50-some fans have gotten tickets through this thread. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like this. And like I say, I had nothing to do with it. This isn't a promo for the site. This is a shout out to those guys and girls who are Pitt fans helping Pitt fans. It's phenomenal to see. It really is. And, it's impressive. It's outstanding. I mean, to pick your adjective on this, it's really something else to see right now. Pitt fans are getting other Pitt fans into this game. And we've been kind of watching the ticket availability on Pitt's website each of the last few days. And from Tuesday to today to Wednesday, there's a couple of those upper deck sections that went from light blue, which means there were some tickets available, to gray, which means there were no tickets available. And I think that's from our thread. I might be wrong, but I think that's from that thread on the message boards where people are going and buying tickets for other fans. It's real. It's unbelievable. If you're on the site, if you're on Panther-Lair.com and you haven't checked out that thread, you got to go look at it, because it's something else. It really is. Big shout out to everybody there. Of course, big shout out to Home Field. We got the Warm Up the Victory Light shirt on right now. It's a personal favorite. It's the yellow one. Home Field, I got to tell you about them real quick. HomeFieldApparel.com. They make these awesome designs and awesome logos, and they put them on a really high quality t-shirt. So this is a really soft shirt. I love the way it fits. I love the way it feels. I wash it every week. I promise I do. And it never loses its shape. It never loses how soft it is. This feels as good as the day I got it out of the packaging when it came in the mail. I mean, it's just that good. And their logos, they're not just putting a Pitt logo on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're putting something that's sort of uniquely and specifically Pitt. Warm Up the Victory Lights. I don't know if anybody else says that, right? I mean, that's a Pitt thing. And they put it on this shirt. They got a shirt that just says 13-9. Who else is selling that shirt? HomeFieldApparel.com. And listen, here's the thing. If you go to Home Field's website, HomeFieldApparel.com, you go to their Pitt collection. If you're a first-time shopper there, use the promo code LAIR, Lair, right? Like Panther-Lair, LAIR. Use that promo code and you'll get 15% off your order. So you get some of the best t-shirts you're going to find, and you get it for a discount. 15% off first-time buyers, LAIR promo code. And we're drinking tonight. Hope you got a beer. I got the Aurochs pumpkin ale if you're into the gluten-free pumpkin ales. I want to get into the comments and questions because there's a lot of them already jumping in. We got a lot of viewers tonight. Thanks, everybody, for coming out and hanging out on a Wednesday night. RJCman38, one of our regular super chatters, he always jumps in right off the bat. He says, let's get the show going. Yeah, we're rolling. I know he said that right before we started, so I'm just catching up on the old comments. John Bridgen, super chatter, says, what's the tattoo that sometimes peeks out of the amazing Home Field Apparel shirt? I guess that does show up on the screen sometimes. I got a little ink on the arm there. It's not really something to talk about on the podcast. We'll talk about it another time. If you find me at a game or at a bar or something like that, we'll talk about tattoos. We can show them off and see what we got. Josh Newark says the tattoo is a Vegas blue dino cat. You know what's the wildest thing? All right. I saw this the first time I interviewed him. Jason Capel, Jeff Capel's brother, assistant coach at Pitt, has a tattoo. I forget if it was on his arm or it might be on his leg. And it's a panther. It's a panther dunking a basketball. And he had it before he even got the job at Pitt. How crazy is that? I forget. I asked him the story. I was like, do you have a tattoo of a panther with a basketball? He's like, yeah, isn't that wild? I forget why he has it. But that's pretty odd that you would end up being a Pitt basketball coach and you have a tattoo of a panther dunking a basketball. All right, let's get to more super chatters. 220 says, Chris, at some point tonight, thoughts on the Clemson pay it forward thread on the Lair. Yeah, 220, that's the thread I'm talking about, the pay it forward thread. I started talking about it before I even saw your message, but I mean, it's awesome. I mean, it's Pitt fans helping Pitt fans, just kind of out of nowhere. And really organically, one guy said, hey, I got 3 tickets. Who needs a ticket? I will give them to you. And then just more people went out and bought tickets to help other Pitt fans get into the game. It might be like 50, 60 people now who are going to the game who wouldn't have been going to the game otherwise if not for this sort of collective effort by Pitt fans. It's really awesome to see. Again, if you're on the site, if you're on Panther-Lair.com, go on the message boards. There's a Clemson ticket pay it forward thread. And check it out. You'll be inspired, I think. Scott Lynch is a super chatter. He says he heard Kenny Pickett reference that Virginia Tech focused on Jordan Addison. Do you expect that to be the norm for the rest of the season? I think, yeah. I think opposing defenses are going to focus on Jordan Addison until you make it worth their while to stop focusing on him. I think if Jared Wayne keeps playing the way he's been playing, he had 6 catches on 6 targets for 90-some yards and a touchdown on Saturday. I think if Taysir Mack hauls in a few more of his, I think he only had 3 catches on like 10 targets. He had a pretty rough game. I think he had 4 drops in that game. If he pulls in some more of those catches, you got to make them pay. You have to make them pay. If they're going to pay extra attention to Jordan Addison, then make it hurt. And the way you make it hurt is with Jared Wayne making plays, Taysir Mack making plays, Lucas Krull and Gavin Bartholomew getting involved, and then running the ball also. Because if you can run the ball, you make it really difficult to over-focus on a guy like Jordan Addison. You know what I mean? If you demand attention on your running game, then opponents are going to have a hard time just honing in on Addison and taking him out of the game. And I mean, we say like take out of the game. They still, what did he end up with? I have the stats up. I forget. He still ended up with like 5 catches for 60 yards or 5 for 62. So, I mean, he still made an impact on the game. It just wasn't the kind of impact that he's been making in so many games, earlier this year. If they're gonna hone in on him, if they're gonna focus on him and try to take him out of the game plan, you've got other guys who can make plays. Jordan Addison is your best receiver, but he's not your only receiver. He's not the only guy who can make plays. Jared Wayne is a weapon. Taysir Mack is a weapon. I know he didn't have a great game at Virginia Tech, but he was pretty darn good at Georgia Tech. 5 for 121 and a touchdown. Yeah, you get that kind of game out of him, and you should be able to get that kind of game out of him if the attention is going to Addison. Lucas Krull is a weapon. And again, the running game. As Izzy Abanikanda and that running game continue to develop, and it's going to be tough against Clemson. Clemson's good. Clemson has a really good defense. They're going to be hard to run on, but you can only stop so many things. And I think Pitt has enough weapons and a wide enough array, an arsenal, that I don't think you can stop everything. Not all the time. You can stop some of the people sometimes, but you can't stop all the people all the time. I think Bob Marley said that, right? I think that was when Bob Marley was doing football commentary. I think he said that. You can stop some of the people some of the times. You can't stop all the people all the time. I think that's what it was. Let's get into some more super chatters. Comments here. Zach Fluardi says there's a GoFundMe set up, but I can't get it around Twitter where every $100 goes to a pair of tickets for someone who can't afford it. I don't know. I guess tag me if you have a GoFundMe set up. I mean, we're hoping that you're, I assume you're on the up and everything like that. But yeah, I appreciate seeing any Pitt fans that are trying to help other Pitt fans. Jeremy Tunney is a super chatter. He threw a couple bucks to us. We appreciate that. I don't see your comment or question. Oh, he says, I truly believe a win on Saturday will change Pitt's future and national perception of the Pitt brand. It'll help. So that's a good place to start, actually, Jeremy. That's a good conversation, a good topic, I think, to go with as we get rolling here. And I know we're like 25 minutes into the podcast, so aren't we already rolling? Each team here, Pitt and Clemson, they each have something different at stake in this game. Okay? Clemson, and this is why I was kind of saying at the beginning that I feel like Clemson might actually have more to lose. They might stand to lose more in this game because Clemson's 4-2 overall. They're 3-1 in the ACC, right? They obviously already lost to NC State. NC State's 2-0 in the ACC. Wake Forest is 4-0. Wake Forest is at the top of the conference. NC State, like Pitt, is 5-1 overall, 2-0 in conference play. Clemson at 3-1. They still have to play Wake Forest, right? They're already effectively 2 games behind NC State. Because NC State, if they were to lose one and both teams finish with 1 loss, NC State and Clemson, NC State would win the tiebreaker. So effectively, they're 2 games behind NC State right now. They need NC State to lose twice. If Clemson loses on Saturday and they go to 2 losses in the conference, now they're 3 games behind NC State and the potential to fall 3 games behind Wake Forest when they eventually play Wake Forest if they were to lose that game. They can't afford to lose, at least not at this point, in conference play. Pitt, on the other hand, they're 2-0 in conference play. After that, if you look through the Coastal Division, Virginia's 3-2, Carolina is 3-3, Georgia Tech's 2-2, Virginia Tech's 1-1. Pitt already beat Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech. And Georgia Tech's got 2 losses, so Pitt's effectively 3 games ahead of them. They're 2 games ahead of Virginia Tech. Miami and Duke are 0-2 and 0-3. I mean, it would be a remarkable rebound and highly unlikely for either one of those teams to make any kind of run. So you're looking at Virginia and North Carolina as the main competition right now in the Coastal Division, as it looks. If things just sort of go according to plan. And Pitt still plays both of them down the stretch. And even if Pitt were to lose to one of them, they still, Virginia already has 2 losses. Carolina already has 3 losses. So they could beat Pitt, but they're still going to have to work to make up ground. And that's going to take, some doing. Carolina only has 2 conference games left. Virginia only has 3 conference games left. They have to go pretty much perfect and both beat Pitt even just for Virginia to have a chance to get ahead of the Panthers. I'm not saying Pitt, I don't want to say something as sort of laissez-faire as Pitt can afford a loss this weekend, but a loss hurts Pitt a lot less in terms of the tangible goals. All right, and that's an important distinction to make. Things you can actually put your hands on, you can feel, you can calculate odds and magic numbers, and a magic number in a very sort of tangible, non-magic, non-mystical way, but the number of games that you need to clinch this or clinch that, you can calculate those things very specifically. And in terms of that, Pitt has less to lose on Saturday than Clemson does. Clemson has a lot more at stake. And I actually had a conversation with somebody who covers Clemson today, and we'll air that for you either Thursday or Friday. I haven't figured it out yet, one of the 2 days. And I asked him this question about who has more to lose here. Is it possible that Clemson stands to lose more than Pitt does in this game? And he said, not exactly, but there are a few things. Obviously, in terms of the standings, it puts Clemson really behind the 8 ball to take a second loss at this point. But then even in terms of, at 4-2 right now, they can still sell, Clemson's coaches can still sell their players on the big dream, right? 2-loss team has never made the college football playoffs, but if ever there was a year where it could happen, 2021 seems like the year. It's just been that kind of year. Everything, up is down, left is right, dogs and cats living together. It's just, everything's crazy right in this year, right? And that's opened the door for so many teams to have a potential chance to. That's why we're talking about Cincinnati as a college football playoff legitimate contender, because the door is really wide open for a lot of different scenarios to happen. And potentially maybe a 2-loss team even sneaks in there. So as long as they sit at 2 losses overall, I think you can sell, and this is what Larry Williams, actually, a friend of ours from TigerIllustrated.com, the Clemson rival site, this is what he said. You can sell that dream is still there, that the possibility of getting to the playoffs is still there at 2 losses. You lose and go to 4-3. It's a lot harder to sell that. It's a lot harder to sell that. And it's damn near impossible. You're not going to make the playoffs at 4-3. There will be enough 1-loss and 2-loss teams, and maybe even undefeated, that you're not going to have a chance of getting into the playoffs if you have a third loss. And so Clemson's got a whole lot riding on this in terms of tangibles, in terms of actual sort of goals and things you can reach with it. Whereas Pitt, if they lose, not out of the running for the Coastal, still the favorite in the Coastal. Not out of the running to win the ACC, still really good chance of being competitive with whoever they face in the ACC championship game and potentially winning it. And so in one respect, Clemson's got more riding on this game, or stands to lose more. And I think that could make them the more desperate team in the situation, which is dangerous. You know, it's dangerous to have a desperate, talented team coming into your stadium. On the other hand, there's a hell of a lot at stake for Pitt in this game, too. And it's funny to see some of the talk, and this is from Pitt fans, it's from local media. There's this sense that beating Clemson would somehow legitimize Pitt, which I just sort of chuckle about. Because if they beat Clemson and then go lose to Miami, nobody's going to say, well, yeah, but they still beat Clemson. All we're going to hear about, if they beat Clemson on Saturday and then go lose to Miami next Saturday, all we're going to hear about is how it's the same old Pitt, that they build up momentum and then they blow it. Okay? At some point in the next 6 games, pretty decent chance Pitt's going to lose a game. Just playing the odds here. Pretty decent chance that Pitt's going to lose a game at some point in the next six games. And when they do, whether that's Saturday or whether that's a month from now, we will hear that it is the same old Pitt. We will hear that Pitt now builds up momentum and then they let it down, they crash. The only way to satisfy, to mollify, to shut up these people would be for Pitt to win every game they ever play and win every championship. Okay? Somebody said to me today that, man, some of these people who talk about sports, it's just like, oh, you're a champion every time you win and you're a bum every time you lose. But I actually don't think that's the case with Pitt. And I'm off on a bit of a rant here, a little bit of a tangent. But Pitt, perception-wise, among local media and occasionally among some of the fans, it's you're a bum when you lose. Or let me say it this way. When you lose, you're a bum. And when you win, we're just going to wait for the next time you lose and you can be a bum again. there's no, you're a champ. When you win, you're the greatest team ever. And when you lose, you're a bum. It's not that extreme. It's all on the negative side. And that's just how it goes. And I know what they've done for 40 years. They've let me down. What is this? Every time they build up momentum. You know what? Everything Pitt can accomplish this year, realistically. I'm not going to talk about playoffs or anything like that. That's not on my radar. That's not something I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about the Coastal Division, potentially competing in the ACC championship game. Those goals are there right now, and they're going to be there on Sunday, whether they win or lose against Clemson. Now, what they can do is they can get one gigantic notch in their belt by beating Clemson. Still only counts as one win. Still only gets them to 6-1 overall and 3-0 in the ACC. But it's a giant notch in their belt. And in terms of perception, beating Clemson, who is down this year, but is still regarded as one of the best programs in the country, is huge. Huge. Now, nobody put NC State in the top 10 for beating Clemson. Nobody's going to put Pitt in the top 10 for beating Clemson. It's going to continue to be a slow climb. Just like it was after Georgia Tech. Just like it was after Virginia Tech. It's going to be that way after Clemson, win or lose. You're going to have to just keep grinding it away. But the opportunity there is to not only do the tangible, which is improved to 6-1 and 3-0 in the ACC, but also achieve some things in the intangible. I think Pitt fans are really buying into this team. I think Pitt fans are really excited about this team. I think Pitt fans believe this team can win in a few different ways and can take care of business. I believe that Pitt fans do have that belief in this team. I think a lot of Pitt fans have been willing to concede or at least to say maybe that Western Michigan game was just a bad day. It happens. Bad days happen. it's not crazy to think that a bad day can happen. And it doesn't even have to be a bad day. It could be a bad quarter. It could be a bad couple of drives. It could be a bad half. It happens, particularly not when you're not as uber talented as a Georgia or an Alabama or whoever. You have bad days. I think a lot of Pitt fans are willing to say, okay, I believe Western Michigan was a bad day. Try not to have too many more of them. I think a lot of Pitt fans are buying into this team. I think even more will if they can beat Clemson. And that's that's what's at stake for Pitt. Now, does that make Pitt the more desperate team in this situation? I don't think so. Does that give Pitt more to lose in this game? I don't think so. I think Clemson has more at stake because of the impact it can have on their larger aspirations. All right. Let's move on here. Get some more comments and questions. Oh, darn it. I didn't bring down... I had a notebook with some things I wanted to talk about. I don't have it. You know what? That's all right, because I know what I wanted to say anyway. All right, let's get some comments and questions. Let's roll through here. Let's see. Anthony Tennyson says, good evening, Chris. I think if Pitt wins, their recruiting will take off even more. What do you think? I think that, I don't think, you never know. I don't think they're going to walk out of Heinz Field if they win and get like 5 commitments that day. I think it just, what I always say is that your success this season has the greatest impact on the next recruiting class. I think when they won the AACC or won the Coastal Division in 2018, it didn't necessarily impact the class they were building at that point, which is the 2019 class. It had a bigger impact on the 2020 class, which ended up being one of their best classes. They even, I think, laid some groundwork for kids in the 2021 class, which I think is a really strong freshman class. And they did so on the strength of that Coastal Division title. I think if they go out and have a big year this year, if they continue to have the success they're having, if they win the Coastal, if they compete in or maybe win the ACC championship game, if they were to end up in a New Year's Day Bowl or anything like that, and I'm not saying they're going to do any of those things. I'm just saying if they do, I think you look at maybe the 2023 class is the one where it really has an impact, which is huge. There's some really good players locally in the 23 class, and they're involved with a lot of guys nationally in the 23 class. So I think that would be where the real impact is. And I'm chuckling because OOF McGee says, what are your thoughts about D's recruitment to Pitt? And I'm wondering to myself, should I do it? Should I play into this? Should I say it? Because here's the thing, McGee. I'm gonna respond to your thing, but you were one of the first comments, and I'm working my way down. So I'm gonna say, who's D? And you're gonna come up with the punchline, but it's gonna be way down at the bottom. So I feel like I don't know. I feel like our comic timing is not gonna be on point with this. But all right, I'll give it to you. All right, who's D? D? Who's D's? All right, you can put the punchline in there. Let's see here. Legendary Mixes says Izzy is the clear running back 1. Yeah, I think I don't think there's any question about that. And we've been talking about that for a really long time. I've been talking since the summer, since the spring about how I thought Israel Benekanda was the best running back on the team, best overall back, highest ceiling, all those things that I talked about. Some people weren't sure about it. I almost started to have some doubts early in the season, but he's shown it. Like I said, the last 2 fourth quarters, he's got 18 carries for 100 yards. He had 140 yards at Virginia Tech. 72 of those came on the final drive, 11.5-minute drive to close out the game. And you could just see it when he runs. There were Le'Veon Bell comparisons that we made and other people made after that game against Virginia Tech. The patience, letting the blocking happen, breaking tackles, speed to the outside. He's a big-time player. Josh Newark says once Izzy cleans up his mental game and pass protection, he'll be great. He's pretty close to it right now. He's pretty close to being great as it is. Josh also says, do you guys know how bad Clemson's offense is? It's so bad. My prediction, Pitt's defense outscores Clemson. Okay, so Clemson's offense is not good. All right, let's talk about this for a second. Clemson's offense is not good. One of the worst in the ACC. They haven't scored more than 20 points in regulation against an FBS opponent this year. I think they've only got 10 touchdowns or so, 10 offensive touchdowns that they've scored. It's just not working, and it's not working on a lot of levels. A lot of things aren't working. They've had musical chairs up front in the offensive line. They've had injuries, which the situations have not gotten better. They lost, Will Shipley was one of their skill guys, one of their playmakers. They lost him to an injury. DJ Uyagale, I apologize if I got that wrong. I've been trying all week to get it right, but I'm gonna have to keep working at it. But he hasn't been as good as they expected him to be, or as good as they needed him to be coming into this season. His first year as the full-time starter. It's a myriad of problems. But here's the but, and then I think there are a couple things. They've worked RPOs into their offense in the past. That's something they can do. They're going to know that Pitt is geared up to stop the run. They know what all these opponents know. That Pitt's linebackers and safeties are reading run first, and if you execute the RPOs, if you run them right, you're going to be able to hit for a lot of plays, a lot of yards. Now, Virginia Tech knew that too, and Georgia Tech knew it as well. And they weren't able to convert the way that Western Michigan did. Some of that might be changes in how Pitt defends them schematically. Some of it may be improved play from the front seven. And some of it just may be that those teams weren't capable of pulling off those plays as effectively as Caleb Ellaby and Western Michigan did. Clemson's going to try and do it, just like Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech did, just like every team on the schedule is going to try to do it, and some are going to be better at it than others. Sam Howell is probably going to be pretty good at it. The keys, whether it's against Sam Howell or whether it's against Clemson, you're going to need to get pressure. You're going to have to get after the quarterback. Clemson's offensive line looks like it is vulnerable. That was a weird Freudian slip there to say venable when we're talking about Clemson's defensive coordinator. You have to get after him. You have to pressure the quarterback, and you have to play those RPOs well in the back seven. You have to have a good plan for it, and you have to have good reps against it. And I think they've gotten better, as evidenced by the product on the field, but you're going to have to keep going with it. Here's the other thing, too. Clemson is one of the worst teams in the country on third down. I think they're outside the top 100 nationally in third down conversion percentage. Pitt's defense is really good on third down. And some people have said, well, yeah, because they, held New Hampshire was 0 for 12 on third down, and Georgia Tech was 3 of 13 on third down, and UMass, I think, was like 4 of 14 or something like that, or I think maybe Virginia Tech was 2 of 11 or something, whereas Tennessee and Western Michigan hit for a really high percentage. Here's the thing, though. In every game this season, okay, even Tennessee and Western Michigan, where they had like a better than 40% conversion percentage on third down, Pitt still held them under their season average. Okay? Pitt still held every opponent this season, all their first 6 opponents, under their season average on third down conversion percentage. Those money downs, right? Isn't that what Pitt likes to talk about? Money downs. That's what the players say, the coaches say. And Pitt has had success on those money downs, holding every team under their season average. So even the ones that did well didn't do as well as they normally do. And the ones that are not good, the ones that do poorly generally, did even worse against Pitt. That's a good thing for Pitt coming into this game because Clemson has not been good on third down. And, what's remarkable is they haven't even gotten, I think Pitt only has 5 sacks on third down this year out of 21 or 22 sacks that they have total. Only 3 of them have come on third down. So they haven't even really been using that as much, where I feel like in the past they've gotten a lot of their sacks on third down. They haven't had to, that hasn't been as big a part of it this year. They've just defended it well and played well on those downs. And they're going to have to do it on Saturday. Get Clemson off the field. Don't let them extend drives. Don't give up more than a couple, hold them to 5 or fewer third down conversions. It'd be a pretty good way to go. I would think. Pretty good way to go. All right. Super chatters here. What else do we have? I think we got a lot of super chatters. Yeah, Zach Fluharty says, would 12-0 Wake versus 11-1 Pitt be for the playoff? That's a great question. Wow. If that ended up happening, and for the record, I don't think it would be the case that those two teams would meet in the national champion or in the ACC championship with a 12-0 record and an 11-1 record. I don't think that would be the case. But if it did, would it be for a playoff spot? Yeah, possibly. All right. Sports World PA says biggest game versus Miami with Larry Fitzgerald or against Cincinnati for the Big East championship. Yeah, I guess so. I would say it's probably the biggest game since that Cincinnati game in 2009. But again, that's where we get back to the tangible intangible kind of duality there, where that game in 2009 was for the Big East championship. The winner was getting the Big East BCS Bowl bid. And the loser was not, obviously. And so there was something tangibly on the line in that game, whereas there's not as much in this game. This is more about perception. This is more about intangible. This is more about convincing people that you are legit, which you'll then have to go out and prove again a week later, and a week after that, and a week after that, and a week after that. So, yes and no. Yes and no. Sam Snyder, I can't agree with you enough. He says this game cannot come sooner. I agree. It cannot come soon enough. Brock Madonic says, how concerned should Pitt be with Camden Brown and him possibly taking an official visit to Florida State? Camden Brown, Pitt's wide receiver recruit, commitment out of South Florida, Fort Lauderdale area. That's where he goes to school, St. Thomas Aquinas. He's been a stud this season, having a huge season. He committed to Pitt in June. Has picked up a few offers. He got Colorado, he got West Virginia, and this week he got Florida State. And even after the Colorado and West Virginia offers, he said he was thinking about possibly taking some visits. He wasn't sure yet. I'm sure he's going to look into Florida State as well. It's in-state. And whatever you want to say about where Florida State is, not geographically, but in terms of their program and the state of their program, it's still a name with cachet, particularly in Florida. I think it's still a name that it opens kids' eyes and gets kids excited and that kind of thing. So it wouldn't be a surprise if he goes and checks them out. Now, Camden Brown is coming to Pitt this weekend. He's going to be at Pitt for the Clemson game. So go out and win and impress him, and maybe you curb that wandering eye. Let's see here. Zach Fluharty says, if Pitt wins, does it essentially lock the Coastal? It's going to go a long way toward it. I don't know. It doesn't clinch anything because you still have 5 games to play, but I think it goes a long way if you can start off 3-0 when everybody else in the division, other than Virginia Tech, already has at least 2 losses, and 2 of the teams have 3 losses already. Virginia Tech only has 1 loss, but that was to you, so you're effectively 2 games ahead of them. Yeah, if you can get to 3-0, you're going to be in really strong position. Not to mention, you're going to look really good. It'll look like you should continue to lock up the division. L421 says, hey, Chris, lots of games left to be played, but if Pitt wins out, are we looking at the 4 in the college football playoff? I'm hesitant to even go down that road, but sure, yeah. If they go 12-1, winning the ACC championship, yeah, I would think so, right? I mean, I think you're in the conversation for a playoff spot, but dear Lord, man, let's stay focused. I mean, I'm the first one to say that it doesn't matter if fans want to look ahead and that kind of thing. I'm hesitant to go too far ahead, mostly because I can't keep my mind off of. I can't take my mind off of this game against Clemson. Let's see here. Josh Newark says the Blacksburg wind was fierce. It was steady all game and very gusty. Pitt played a perfect game by running the ball and absolutely dominating the game from start to finish. Yeah, and we talked to Kenny Pickett about that. He said the wind was pretty bad. It was pretty rough. That wasn't necessarily the reason they didn't take as many deep shots. According to Pro Football Focus, Pickett only attempted, I think, 3 passes of 20 yards or more, where he's been averaging about 5 of those per game. He completed 2 of them. in the Virginia Tech game. I asked him, was that more about the wind or was that more about what Virginia Tech was doing? He said, no, it wasn't about the wind. It was more how they were defending. They were trying to take away the deep shots, which I actually think was a bit of a positive. Okay, Virginia Tech says, we want to take away the deep shots, and Pitt goes out and says, all right, fine, we'll march down the field in other ways. We'll find other ways to get down the field and score touchdowns and ultimately win this game. 404 Strang says, I think it really shows how good the offense is that they had an off day and still scored 28. Yeah, and it's funny because I felt during the game that it was an off game for the offense. You know, I mean, I kind of had that same perception. I was thinking about, well, it's just a tough game. They're having a rough game. But then you look at it, and they end up with 400 yards of offense, 200 passing, 200 rushing. They score 4 touchdowns, and they have an 11.5-minute drive at the end. And so I've kind of changed my view on whether or not it's an off game for the offense. You know, I kind of think they were able to do what they needed to do and what they wanted to do, really. I know they punted more than they have in recent games, but they still more or less controlled. And they capitalized at the end of the first half. You know, they turn the turnover into a touchdown, and then they have another lengthy drive for a touchdown. And then they get 1 touchdown in the second half, and again, march for 11.5 minutes. So I agree with you that a game where it felt like the offense wasn't really clicking, they still win by 21. And then I would also add the caveat of I think they were actually pretty effective. I think they were playing pretty well. RJ Seaman38 says Taysier Mack dropping balls is a problem. Yeah, it definitely was a problem in that game. It wasn't a problem in the game before. If he can get back to his form from the Georgia Tech game, I'm pretty optimistic about what he's going to be able to do. I know he had the 5 for 121 against Georgia Tech, and he caught it on 6 targets. So at Georgia Tech, he had 6 targets, 5 catches for 121 and a touchdown. And I think the one incomplete pass, I don't even think Pro Football Focus gave him a drop on that. They gave him 3 drops in the Virginia Tech game, which actually, according to Pro Football Focus, was the first time he had a drop in a game this season since UMass. He had a drop against UMass and then 3 against Virginia Tech and finished with, so he's got 4 on the season so far. He had a rough game. I mean, a bad game at Virginia Tech, but he had a great game at Georgia Tech. So you see which Taysier Mack shows up in this game. 1-2 says, if we lose at least one other game, which I suspect we will, that Virginia game becomes effectively for the Coastal. It might. Pitt plays Virginia in Pittsburgh on November 20th. But they've also got Georgia Tech next weekend. Or this weekend, excuse me. They have Georgia Tech at home this weekend. And then they have Pitt in the next to last weekend of the season. And then on the 27th of November, they host Virginia Tech. I think Virginia looks pretty good. They have an offense that can score, and that's key. They have a quarterback who's playing at a really high level. They just blew out Duke 48-0. But their games before that, they won at Louisville 34-33. They won at Miami 30-28. And they lost to Wake Forest by 20, and they lost to North Carolina by 20. That's by no means a complete team. And I think they've got some vulnerabilities. They gave up 59 to North Carolina. They gave up 37 to Wake Forest. Again, they gave up 33 to Louisville, gave up 28 to Miami. I think their defense is suspect. They should beat Georgia Tech this weekend, but then they're going to have this tough little weird, late October, early November non-conference stretch where they play at BYU and host Notre Dame, and then they get Pitt and Virginia Tech. I'm not convinced entirely that Virginia's going to beat Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech. I mean, we'll see how they look this weekend against the Yellow Jackets. That game's at 7:30, so we should have an opportunity to watch some of that. But I'm not convinced that they will, they won't lose another game between now and then. Let's scroll through here. RJ Seaman says, I love you, RJ Seaman38. You're a super chatter. You contribute some money to the podcast. I really appreciate your support. But when you say Mark Whipple's play calling needs to be better against Clemson, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, man. I think he's calling good plays, and I think they're executing. I mean, they've got a number 4 scoring offense in the country. They've had, again, 23 minutes of possession in the last 2 fourth quarters combined. 38 plays for 211 yards in the last two fourth quarters. He's closed out games. They haven't scored a touchdown on their first drive, but in their second drive at Virginia Tech, they marched 94 yards. I have a hard time coming down on Mark Whipple too hard right now. Let's see here. Kyle Peterson says Clemson is 4-2. They're also one touchdown away from a 1-5 record with losses to Georgia Tech, Boston College, and Syracuse. Yeah, he says I've got Pitt 31-14 on Saturday. Yeah, I mean I can't disagree with you. Look, I was like a lot of you. I mean, I'm sure you watched Syracuse Clemson on Friday night, right? You see Clemson barely escape on a missed field goal from they barely escaped from the Carrier Dome. That's a red flag, to use the Twitter meme. That's a red flag that they barely escaped the Carrier Dome with a 17-14 win. It makes me wonder about really what is your ceiling. I think Syracuse has a good defense, maybe a little better than Pitt, but not so much so that Pitt can't compete with them. You know what I mean? That Pitt can't, do something similar. I wouldn't be surprised if they hold this Clemson team under 20. Then it becomes a question of Pitt being able to score against Clemson's defense. That's the two sides of it. And 1-2 says Clemson's offense may be weak, but it only takes one guy snagging a ball over a 5'9" corner or an athlete getting the ball in space. The pass rush, other than Habakkuk Baldonado and Kalijah Kancey, needs to improve. Yeah, they got to get pressure on DJ. They have to get after the quarterback. They can't give him time to pick it apart or throw up those jump balls because these corners for Pitt haven't really been tested in that way this season. I don't think they've been tested on jump balls and fades and things like that. Those what we saw Pitt get beat on in 2016. Now, the pass rush this year is better than it was in 2016. In 2016, they had one guy who could rush the passer. This year, they've got DNs, they've got linebackers, they've got a playmaking defensive tackle in Kalijah Kancey. They potentially have two if Keyshawn Camp is back. They should be able to rush the passer better, which is going to help cut down on the opportunities for those fades and those jump balls and those, back shoulder fades and all those kinds of things. They should be able to cut down on that. Like I said, again, you don't want to be the game where Clemson breaks out. You don't want it to be against your defense. Late super chatter jumping in. Our guy Michael B. Glad to see you. He says, hi, Chris. Sorry I'm late again. Just want to support the podcast. What do you think of Pitt versus Penn State in the Peach Bowl? It could happen. Yeah, it sure could. It absolutely can. It absolutely can happen. No, I don't know. Again, that's a long ways down the road, and a lot of things have to go certain directions between now and then. Let's see. Some more comments and questions before we go. Will Z says, I have a sneaky feeling this game is going to come down to a field goal, and Josh Newark follows up. Will Z, that field goal prediction scares me. Yeah, I was thinking about that today. Somebody asked me for a prediction. I said, I don't know, maybe like 23-14 or 23-11 or something like that. And I was like, well, wait. For Pitt to score 23, they would need to kick 3 field goals? Do I have confidence that Pitt can convert 3 field goals? I'm not entirely sure that I do. They haven't been tested yet. We haven't seen Pitt's kicking situation. Sam Scarton and and Ben Sauls. I assume Scarton's the guy again. We haven't seen them put in a pressure situation yet. And it's been an adventure when they've been playing without pressure, without any crazy, game riding on this kick, a Chris Blewett Clemson kick, which we had seen Chris Blewett make kicks like that before. So we haven't seen these guys in that situation, and that very well could be the case this week. There could be some pressure situations on the kicking game, and that could be an example. Let's see. I thought I had some other comments to get to. Josh Newark says, was Rodney Hammond injured last week? I think Pat Narduzzi said he was a little bit dinged up. I don't know how severe that was. I think they probably would expect him back this week, but I think you want to look for Izzy Abanikanda to be the man, right? I know you want another back to come in and play. You want another back to spell him, but Abanikanda needs to carry the load. He needs to be in the ice bath on Sunday after this one. He needs to be not injured, but the kind of thing where he comes out of a game with maybe 30 carries or something crazy like that, which I don't think a running back on this Pitt team with this offense is going to ever have 30 carries. I just don't think that's the way they're going to play. But Izzy Abanikanda needs to be the man this week, I think. Jeremy Tunney says, I've never felt more confident in a Pitt team. It feels like I'm on a different planet. All right, this might be a good place to end because, Jeremy, I mean, I'm with you. I feel a weird amount of confidence in this team, and it's almost sort of frightening. And I think, frightening because, we saw them lose to Western Michigan, right? We saw them give up a bunch of open passes against Tennessee that if they were converted, that game would have gone the other way. We saw Georgia Tech had opportunities, but Pitt was able to turn them away. And that's the thing, sort of each of these games, other than Western Michigan, Pitt was able to make enough plays to win. I think we've got a half season, including a couple non-conference games and FCS games, but you've got 2 ACC games and another game against an SEC opponent where this offense has been consistently productive and effective. Now, they're going to play the best defense they've faced all season, but they're also going to play an offense that's really struggling. I think this pass rush can do just enough. I think they can use the pass rush to get a turnover or two. I think they're going to probably give up some plays on offense. I think they're going to give up some plays to Clemson's offense. But it shouldn't be much. They should be able to minimize it. I think they should be able to minimize those plays that Tennessee makes. And then I think the offense just keeps chipping away. And they get the run going and they get, they hit enough passing plays. And Kenny Pickett's going to have to make some plays. He's going to have to keep plays alive. He's going to have to scramble. He's probably going to take a few hits in this game. I think he's probably going to get knocked around a little bit. Not because, the pocket always collapsing, but because guys are covered and he's going to have to scramble. Or pressure comes and he's going to have to scramble. He's going to have to do all the things that he's done well this year. He's going to have to do them all on Saturday. And chief among those, he's going to have to lead this team. He's going to have to not carry them, but he's going to have to lead. And it's what I, headlined on the Kenny Pickett show this week, setting the tone for a big game. Kenny Pickett has to set the tone. And if Kenny Pickett leads this team out there, I'm almost at the point where I'm giving Pitt an advantage over almost everybody they face because of him, because of how he plays, and because of how he leads. And so that gives me a fair amount of confidence as well. Will Z says, final predictions, anybody? And Will Z says he's thinking 14-10 Pitt. 404 Strang says 35-14 Pitt. RJ Seaman 38, who thinks Mark Whipple's play calling is suspect, is predicting a 42-3 win for Pitt. OOF McGee says he's got Pitt 24-17. Josh Newark calls a 13-9 game. I like it, Josh. I will say, as we sit here tonight, I'm looking at for some reason 23 keeps jumping in my head, but let's make it an even 24. Let's say Pitt scores 3 touchdowns and a field goal, and let's say Pitt scores 24 and 10, and Clemson gets let's give them a touchdown and a couple field goals. So let's go with a 24-13 win. I think Pitt's going to win. I have some confidence here, and everybody else is jumping in with it as well. Who else we got? Jacob Ludi says 24-21 Pitt. Michael B, 31-13. Will, 31-21. We got a couple Wills in here. John Verbis says 27-14. Guys, we're all way too optimistic. Well, I guess Michael B, you only said 31-13. You didn't say who you thought was going to win. You just said you think the score will be 31-13. So we'll see. Pete K says 38-14 Pitt. That's a big one. That's a big one. Guys, we're all too optimistic about this. But I think this team has done enough through 6 games to inspire some confidence. You know what I mean? I think they've inspired some confidence in the fans. I think they've inspired some confidence in the people watching these games nationally. I think the ACC is taking notice. And it's an opportunity to go out there and not play above their heads, but just do what they've been doing. Really solid, consistent on offense. Keep chipping away even if you get stopped. And then kind of aggressive, sort of feast or famine on defense, with the thought that you're going to make more plays than they do, or make it difficult enough for them to make any plays. Oh man, all this talk about this game. I mean, it's still like 2 days and 18 hours. You know, and before we started, it was 2 days and 19 hours. I feel like we've been talking about this game for about 5 hours, and it's still only 2 days and 18 hours. But here we go. You know, I can't wait. I'm excited, and one way or the other, it's going to be interesting when we get together here after the game. I don't know what time we're going to start our post-game show. My guess is sometime after 9:30, somewhere around there. I will have, more specific times during the game. I'll tweet it out. But we will be live Saturday night talking about Pitt Clemson, these home games. I ended up getting back to the house a little bit later, getting back to the office a little bit later. Tony Sadaka jumping in late as a super chatter. Appreciate you, man. He says the score does not matter. I just want Pitt to win. Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, Tony. I think 23-22 or 52-22, whatever it is. I think that's a win, and I don't think there's really a bad win for Pitt to have here in this case. I don't think there's a bad win. Or a way any win would go poorly, or Pitt would look bad in a win. But anyway, so yeah, we will have the Panther-Lair post game on Saturday night after the game. I'm guessing around 9:30 or so. I will tweet out a specific start time that we will get going. So keep an eye out for that. Of course, stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com through the week. Panther-Lair.com. The Kenny Pickett Show is live there right now. You can watch that, about 20 minutes or so of Kenny talking about the Virginia Tech game, talking about this Clemson game, talking about a whole bunch of things. We covered a lot of topics on this week's Kenny Pickett Show. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was a good one. It was a good one. So you should definitely check that out. Of course, home field, warm up the victory lights. We'll see if we've got it going on Saturday night. We'll see if the victory lights turn on, but you can wear this shirt anytime. Homefieldapparel.com. It's some of the best Pitt shirts you're going to find. If you're a first-time shopper there, use a promo code LAIR Lair. You can get 15% off your order. So you can't lose with that deal. Go check out Panther-Lair.com. Go check out homefieldapparel.com. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Make sure you do that so you get a notification when we go live after the game on Saturday. Saturday morning on The Fan, we have the Panthers Insider Show, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. You can tune into that. And then the game at 3:30. And then we'll be back here. Same situation, same place, same deal to talk about what we see. So thanks, everybody, for jumping in here and hanging out on a Wednesday night. Thanks, everybody who listens to the podcast. Do whatever you can to get through the next couple days. And we will talk to you on Saturday night. Have fun at the game. Let's see what happens.